The great hall of the Zephyrian Council was filled with strange creatures from across the galaxy. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Hundreds of different alien beings sat in curved seats that went up high like a huge theater. Some had 6 legs, others had tentacles, and many had scales or fur or skin that changed colors. Ambassador Krilltek walked slowly to the center of the room. His bug-like body clicked with each step. His large compound eyes looked around nervously at all the other aliens watching him. He was from a race called the Vorthak, and they looked like giant insects with smart minds. High Chancellor Vexthal sat on the highest seat. He was tall and thin with tentacles that moved like ocean waves. His skin glowed different colors when he had different feelings. Right now, the colors showed he was bored and a little annoyed. "Speak quickly, Ambassador," said the Chancellor. His voice came through machines that changed his alien words into sounds the other creatures could understand. "We have many important things to discuss today." Krilltek's voice shook a little as he began to talk. "Honored leaders, I come to warn you about a new species we have found. They call themselves humans. They live on the 3rd planet around a small yellow star. We must be very careful with these creatures." A sound like laughter filled the great hall. It came from hundreds of different mouths and throats. Some aliens whistled, others made clicking sounds, and some made deep rumbling noises. They were all laughing at Krilltek. General Zordon stood up from his seat. He was huge and looked like a lizard that walked on 2 legs. His teeth were sharp, and his claws could cut through metal. "You are afraid of mammals?" he asked with amusement in his voice. "Our scouts tell us they have not even learned to travel between stars on their own. They are like children playing with simple tools." Krilltek's bug eyes moved around the room quickly. He could see that no one was taking him seriously. "That is exactly why they are dangerous," he said, his voice getting louder. "They do not have good weapons or fast ships, but they have something much worse. They never give up. They will fight until they die, and they will find ways to hurt you that you never thought possible." More laughter filled the hall. Some aliens were slapping their knees or tentacles. Others were making the sounds their species made when they found something very funny. "Tell us what happened," said Chancellor Vexthal. His tentacles waved in a way that showed he thought this would be entertaining. "What did these dangerous mammals do to scare the mighty Vorthak?" Krilltek took a deep breath. "It happened at Kepler Station. That is a small mining operation on the edge of our space. We were digging for rare metals when a human ship arrived. It was called the New Horizons, and it was carrying medical supplies to some human colony." The alien ambassador's voice became more serious. "The ship was commanded by Captain Jake Morrison. He had only 20 people with him. We had 50 warships and over 2,000 soldiers. When we told them to surrender, they said no. And then—" "They ran away?" asked General Zordon with a mean smile. "No," said Krilltek quietly. "They fought." The laughter in the hall became quieter. Some aliens were starting to listen more carefully. "They turned their cargo containers into bombs and shot them at our ships. They used their own ship's power source as a weapon. Commander Lisa Hayes kept fighting even when she was bleeding and hurt badly. She never asked us to stop. She never begged for mercy." Krilltek's voice got stronger as he remembered what happened. "They destroyed 3 of our warships." 3 warships? Using a cargo ship and some medical supplies. "And when we finally captured some of them, they would not tell us anything about their people or their planets. They just stared at us with hate in their eyes." The great hall was much quieter now. Some aliens were starting to look worried, but that is not the worst part, continued Krilltek. Before we could stop them, they sent a message to their people. The message told other humans exactly how they fought us. It told them our weaknesses. Now all humans know how to fight against us. Chancellor Vexthal's tentacles moved more slowly now. The colors on his skin showed he was thinking. This was just one small incident. Perhaps your soldiers were not ready for such strange tactics. I have studied their history, said Krilltek. These humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. They have fought each other, and they have fought their own planet. They have weapons that could destroy their whole world, but they choose not to use them. They work together when they have a common enemy. The ambassador looked around the room at all the different alien faces. They have a saying on their world. It goes like this: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What happens when we become their enemy? What happens when they decide to work together against us? General Zordon laughed again, but it did not sound as confident as before. Then they will learn their place in the galaxy, just like every other species has learned. Will they? Asked Kriltek. Every other species we have conquered was more advanced than humans. They had better weapons and faster ships, but they gave up when we showed them our power. Humans are different. They do not care if they cannot win. They will fight anyway. Chancellor Vextel raised one tentacle for silence. Enough. We have heard your warning, Ambassador. But the Council has already decided. Humans are classified as a Class C species. They will be conquered and put to work for the Empire. This meeting is over. The aliens in the Great Hall began to make noise again. They talked about how entertaining it would be to have human slaves. Some talked about what kind of work humans might be good at. Others wondered if humans would be fun to hunt for sport. As the other aliens left the hall, Kriltek walked up to Chancellor Vextel. Your Excellency, please reconsider. I have seen what happens when humans get angry. They do not just fight for themselves, they fight for ideas. Ideas about freedom and fairness. Ideas spread faster than weapons. Chancellor Vextel's skin glowed with colors that showed he was amused. Ideas cannot stop plasma cannons, Ambassador. Ideas cannot destroy battleships. These humans will learn to obey, just like all the others. But what if they teach other species not to obey? Asked Kriltek quietly. The Chancellor's tentacles stopped moving for a moment. Then he made a sound like laughter. Impossible. We have controlled this galaxy for 1,000 years. No species has ever successfully rebelled against the Empire. A few primitive mammals will not change that. Kriltek bowed his head in the way his people showed respect. But inside he felt fear growing like ice in his stomach. He had seen the look in the human commander's eyes. It was not the look of someone who could be broken or trained or made to give up. It was the look of someone who would rather die fighting than live as a slave. As he walked out of the great crystal hall, Kriltek wondered if the Empire had just made the biggest mistake in its long history. Soon, they would send their fleets to the small blue world where the humans lived. Soon, they would try to make the humans surrender. And soon, the Empire would learn that some species cannot be conquered, no matter how big and powerful you think you are. 3 months after the council meeting, Admiral Exmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger on his screens. The ship was called Worldrender, and it was the biggest warship in the Empire fleet. Around him flew 200 other ships of different sizes and shapes, all carrying weapons that could destroy entire cities. The Admiral was a Zephyrian like the Chancellor. His skin glowed with confident colors as he looked at the primitive world ahead. He had conquered 47 planets in his long career. This would be number 48, and it looked like it would be the easiest one yet. Sir, said his communications officer, we are receiving many signals from the planet. They know we are here. Admiral Vexmore's tentacles moved in a pattern that showed amusement. Of course they do. Primitive species always panic when they see real power. Open a channel to their leaders. On Earth, deep under the ground in Switzerland, President Maria Santos sat in a room full of military leaders from every country. The walls were thick concrete that could survive nuclear bombs. Computer screens showed the alien fleet that now surrounded their planet like a cloud of death. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark had been watching space around Earth for months. His early warning system had spotted the alien ships while they were still far away. Madam President, he said, we count exactly 203 enemy vessels. The smallest ones are bigger than our largest battleships. President Santos looked around the room at the faces of generals and admirals from China, Russia, America, Europe, and every other nation on Earth. 3 months ago, these people had been ready to fight each other. Now they all wore the same worried expression. What are our options? She asked. General Pete Williams opened a folder full of battle plans. Ma'am, we have been preparing for this since we got the warning from Kepler Station. Every ship we can put in space is ready to fight. Every missile, every gun, every soldier. But honestly, we are badly outmatched. Dr. Helen Park had spent those 3 months studying pieces of alien technology that humans had recovered from earlier encounters. Their energy weapons are much more powerful than anything we have. But they seem to need a lot of power to work. If we could somehow cut off their power. Commander Amy Johnson commanded the Space Force, which was made up of converted civilian ships and military satellites. Even if we could hurt them, we would be fighting in space with ships that were built to fly around Earth. They control all the space around our planet. The room fell silent as everyone thought about how hopeless their situation looked. Then the main screen came to life, showing the face of Admiral Lexmore. His alien features looked strange and frightening to human eyes. When he spoke, computers translated his words into every human language. "Primitive creatures of the third planet," the Admiral said in a voice that expected total obedience. "I am Admiral Lexmore of the Galactic Empire. Your species has been studied and you have been chosen to join our empire as workers. You will give up all your weapons immediately. Your military forces will be disbanded. You will prepare to be moved to planets where you will work for us. If you obey, we will let you live." President Santos stood up and walked to the camera. Her voice was calm and steady, even though her heart was beating fast. "Admiral Lexmore, I am President Santos. I speak for all the people of Earth. We thank you for making contact with us. However, we must respectfully say no to your offer. We would prefer to discuss peace and ways we can help each other." The alien's skin flashed with colors that meant he found this funny. "You do not understand, small mammal. This is not a request, this is an order. You have 24 of your planet's hours to surrender, or we will show you what happens when you disobey the Empire." The screen went dark. President Santos turned back to her advisors. "Get me Director Collins from the intelligence agency. If we are going to fight gods, we need to use every trick we have ever learned." The next 24 hours became known as Preparation Day. All across Earth, humans began the biggest mobilization in their history. It was not just soldiers and sailors. Engineers worked around the clock to turn civilian ships into weapons. Computer programmers created viruses to attack alien systems. Scientists built bombs from household materials. In garages and workshops, ordinary people used 3D printers to make ammunition and spare parts. Retired soldiers came back to serve alongside teenagers who had just learned to shoot. Farmers welded armor plates onto their tractors. Fishermen loaded their boats with explosives. When Admiral Lexmore's deadline ended, he expected to receive Earth's surrender. Instead, he got something no Dominion fleet had ever faced before. Every human ship, satellite, missile, and weapon fired at the same time. Captain Steve Mitchell commanded a ship called Independence. It had been a mining vessel before the war, but now it carried a nuclear reactor rigged to explode. As he guided his ship toward the alien fleet, he spoke to all the other human fighters. "Listen up, everyone," he said over the radio. "We are not trying to win this battle. We cannot win against ships like these. But we can make sure they know they have been in a real fight. We can make sure they remember that humans do not go quietly." The space around Earth erupted in fire and explosions. Human missiles struck alien shields and burst into clouds of metal fragments. Nuclear-powered ramming ships drove themselves into enemy vessels. Swarms of small drones, each carrying a single bomb, attacked like angry bees. The aliens had expected a quick surrender. Instead, they found themselves in a real battle. Their shields absorbed most of the human attacks, but not all. Some of the smaller alien ships took damage. Some had to pull back to make repairs. Admiral Lexmore watched his tactical displays with growing confusion. His ships were winning, but they were having to work for it. These humans were fighting with weapons that should not have been able to hurt his fleet, yet somehow they were doing damage. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we have lost contact with 3 escort vessels. The humans are using some kind of kinetic weapons fired from their moon. They are also sending up swarms of small attack craft that our point defense systems cannot track properly." The admiral's skin color shifted to show anger and confusion. "How are they launching so many ships?" "Our intelligence said they barely had a space program. It appears they have converted civilian vessels into military craft, sir. Cargo ships, passenger shuttles, even what appear to be pleasure boats. They have armed them with primitive weapons and are using them as expendable attack craft." From her command bunker, President Santos watched the battle through satellite feeds. She could see human ships dying in bright flashes of light as alien energy weapons hit them. But she could also see that the human attacks were having an effect. The alien formation was spreading out, using more energy, taking longer to advance. "How long can we keep this up?" she asked General Williams. "Maybe 6 hours, ma'am. After that, we will have thrown everything we have at them." President Santos nodded. "Then we make those 6 hours count. Signal all units. This is not about winning or losing. This is about showing them who we are. This is about making sure that when other species hear the story of Earth, they know that humans fought back." Above Earth's atmosphere, the battle continued. Human ships exploded in brilliant flashes, but each explosion took alien ships with them. The space around the planet became filled with debris, radiation, and the scattered remains of both fleets. Admiral Vexmore realized that his easy conquest had become something else entirely. These humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to make the victory as expensive as possible, and for the first time in his long career, the Admiral began to wonder if conquering Earth was going to be worth the cost. 3 months had passed since Admiral Vexmore arrived at Earth expecting an easy victory. His confidence was now completely gone. What should have been a simple conquest had turned into the longest and bloodiest campaign in Empire history. The humans had done something that no other species had ever tried. Instead of just defending their home planet, they had somehow taken the fight to the Empire across multiple star systems. While the main fleet fought around Earth, human teams were attacking Empire bases, supply ships, and communication stations throughout the sector. Colonel Dan Murphy led these special attack teams. He had somehow figured out how to steal Empire ships and use them to move his soldiers around the galaxy. His team struck mining operations on 7 different worlds, destroyed supply convoys carrying food and ammunition to the fleet, and blew up the communication relays that the Empire used to coordinate their forces. "The problem with these aliens," said Dr. Susan Lee from her hidden laboratory in the asteroid belt, "is that they think like bullies, not like survivors. They have always had better weapons than everyone else, so they never learn to be creative. We have been making do with less our whole lives." Dr. Lee had done something the Empire scientists said was impossible. She had taken apart captured alien weapons and learned how they worked. Then she had built new weapons that combined human cleverness with alien technology. Her hybrid weapons were now being used by human forces across the solar system. Commander Tony Rodriguez worked from a damaged space station called Olympus. The station had been nearly destroyed in the first battle, but Tony and his engineers had turned the wreckage into a weapon factory. They took destroyed ships and space junk and turned them into guided missiles that constantly attacked the Empire fleet. The aliens had to waste energy and ammunition shooting at what they thought were incoming warships, only to discover they were attacking empty chunks of metal with small rocket engines attached. This forced the Empire fleet to keep their shields up all the time, which drained their power and made them tired. But the real change came when Lieutenant Sarah Brooks sent a message that reached every human in the solar system. She had been captured when her ship was destroyed, and everyone thought she was dead. Instead, she had been taken prisoner aboard the Empire flagship. "This is Lieutenant Brooks calling any human forces who can hear me," her voice crackled over the radio. "I have been on their main ship for 6 days. They keep us in cages like we are animals, but they made one big mistake. They think that caged animals are helpless." Her message included detailed information about Empire ship designs, how their weapons worked, and what their battle plans were. More importantly, it proved that humans could survive and keep fighting even when they were captured and held prisoner. This intelligence gave human forces the breakthrough they needed. But even more important was what it showed the Empire soldiers. These humans would not break no matter what happened to them. Admiral Lexmore called an emergency meeting with his top officers aboard the Worldrender. The holographic displays around. The conference room showed casualty reports and supply shortages that painted a very bad picture for the Empire forces. How have we lost 47 ships to a species that does not even have antimatter weapons? He demanded from his tactical officer. Commander Velther was a methodical alien who studied every detail of battle reports. Sir, they are using tactics that make no sense according to military rules. They use their damaged ships as bombs. They coordinate attacks using civilian vessels. Their ground forces refuse to surrender even when they are completely surrounded and have no chance of winning. Another officer added, they have also started broadcasting our military communications to what they call resistance groups throughout Empire space. Several of our client species have begun reporting unusual activities that look like the same kind of operations these humans are running. Admiral Lexmore felt his skin change to darker colors as he realized what this meant. The humans were not just fighting a defensive war. They were teaching other conquered species how to fight back against Empire control. Captain Nick Anderson had been leading strike teams aboard captured Empire ships. His forces conducted hit and run attacks against supply convoys while broadcasting instructional messages to any species that would listen. His messages were simple and direct. This is how you disable their shields, he would say over captured Empire communication channels. This is how you jam their communications. This is how you make them pay for every system they control. The effects of these broadcasts were spreading across the galaxy faster than the Empire could stop them. Reports came in daily about uprisings, sabotage, and coordinated resistance movements on worlds that had been peaceful for decades. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the local population had used human-taught methods to take control of their orbital defense platforms. On the agricultural world of Centauri Prime, farmers had turned their harvesting equipment into weapons and driven out the Empire tax collectors. Most disturbing of all, some Empire military units were reporting that their own soldiers were asking questions about orders and sometimes refusing to carry out missions against civilian populations. Admiral Lexmore realized he was facing something unprecedented in Empire history. Not only were the humans refusing to be conquered, they were making conquest itself impossible by teaching resistance to everyone else. The Admiral opened a communication channel to Earth, something he had sworn he would never do. President Santos appeared on his screen, broadcasting from the command bunker beneath what remained of Geneva. President Santos, the Admiral said, his voice lacking the confidence it had carried months earlier, I am prepared to discuss a temporary ceasefire. To negotiate terms? President Santos looked tired but determined. Behind her, human officers continued working at their stations, coordinating resistance efforts across multiple star systems. Admiral, she replied calmly, we have been ready to talk since the day you arrived, but we are not interested in discussing our surrender. If you want to talk, we will discuss your withdrawal from our space. Admiral Lexmore's tactical displays showed him the reality of his situation. His fleet was being slowly worn down by constant attacks. His supply lines were under assault throughout the sector. Worst of all, the resistance movements spreading across Empire space were using tactics and technologies that humans had shared with them. For the first time in Empire history, a conquest was failing not because the enemy was stronger, but because they had made strength irrelevant. The humans had weaponized the idea of freedom itself. Very well, the Admiral said finally. I agree to a ceasefire while we discuss terms. As the communication ended, Admiral Lexmore realized that he was no longer trying to conquer a primitive species. He was trying to contain a revolution that threatened the very foundation of the Empire. The humans had taught the galaxy something dangerous. They had proven that the Empire could be resisted and resistance could succeed. The peace talks were held aboard the human research ship Aurora. Floating in space between Earth and Mars, Captain Ellen Davis commanded the ship, which had been chosen as neutral ground for the negotiations. For the first time in Empire history, an admiral was sitting down to negotiate with a species the Empire had classified as primitive. Admiral Dexmore arrived with a full diplomatic escort, expecting to discuss the terms of human surrender. Instead, he found himself sitting across from a delegation that included not only humans, but also representatives from several species that the Empire had conquered years ago. President Santos introduced the non-human members of her team as if this was perfectly normal. Admiral, I would like you to meet Ambassador Kethril of the Hegemony Worlds, Representative Zixuna of the Mining Collectives, and Commander Velanash of the Outer Rim Territories. The Admiral's skin flashed with confused and alarmed colors. These were species that had been under Empire control for decades. Yet here they sat as equals with the humans, wearing human-designed environmental suits and speaking with the confidence of free beings. Ambassador Kethril leaned forward with obvious satisfaction. His people had been enslaved for over 50 years. Admiral, my people have a saying that means something like, the storm teaches the mountain to bend. Humans have taught us that sometimes mountains can become the storm instead. Dr. Jennifer Walsh was Earth's chief diplomatic strategist. She presented the coalition's demands with calm professionalism. Admiral, we are prepared to discuss ending the fighting, but not surrender. Our terms are simple. Complete withdrawal of Empire forces from this sector. Formal recognition that all member species of our liberation coalition are independent. And establishment of neutral zones for future diplomatic contact. Admiral Dexmore's translator worked hard to process what he was hearing. You are in no position to make demands, mammals. Despite your unexpected resistance, the Empire still has overwhelming superiority in both numbers and technology. Colonel Robert Hayes was a tough Marine who had planned the successful defense of Luna Base. He smiled grimly at the Admiral's words. Admiral, with respect, you might want to check your recent intelligence reports before you say that. As if, this had been planned. Commander Lisa Turner of Naval Intelligence activated a holographic display that showed the current state of Empire forces throughout the local sector. Red markers showed destroyed ships, disabled installations and systems, where local populations had successfully revolted with human help. In the past month, Commander Turner explained calmly, 17 worlds have declared independence from Empire control. Your supply lines have been cut in 43 systems. More importantly, the tactics and technologies we have shared have spread to over 200 resistance groups across 57 star systems. Admiral Dexmore's senior advisor whispered urgently in his ear. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had turned the concept of freedom into a weapon that was spreading across the galaxy. Captain Mike Foster had recently returned from a deep reconnaissance mission behind Empire lines. Admiral, we have been monitoring your communications with Empire High Command. 3 more sectors have reported similar resistance movements. Your own government is starting to question whether the conquest model works when the conquered species learn to fight back effectively. President Santos stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars where human and alien ships maintained their uneasy truce. Admiral, we did not start this war, but we have learned something important from it. The galaxy is full of species who have been waiting for someone to show them that the Empire is not invincible. We have become that proof. Admiral Dexmore realized he was no longer negotiating the terms of human surrender. He was trying to prevent the collapse of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. The mammals had done something unprecedented. They had made resistance contagious. The negotiations continued for 6 days. During this time, the Admiral received increasingly urgent communications from Empire High Command. As reports of uprisings spread throughout their territory, entire fleets were deserting to join local resistance movements. Governors were being overthrown by their own populations. Supply worlds were refusing to send resources to Empire military forces. "Admiral," said President Santos during one of their private conversations, "your empire succeeded for so long because you convinced everyone that resistance was hopeless. You made surrender seem like the smart choice. But we have shown the galaxy that you can be beaten. Once people know that, they stop being afraid." The Admiral's skin showed colors of deep worry and exhaustion. "What do you want from us?" "Total destruction of the Empire." "We want you to leave us alone," replied President Santos simply. "We want you to let other species choose their own governments. We want you to stop treating thinking beings like property. That is all we have ever wanted." Finally, Admiral Vexmore agreed to terms that would have been unthinkable when the campaign began. The Treaty of Seoul established humanity and their coalition partners as a recognized sovereign power. It created demilitarized zones throughout the sector. Most significantly, it included provisions for cultural exchange programs, which was diplomatic language for allowing human advisors to teach resistance tactics to any species that requested such assistance. As Admiral Vexmore prepared to return to Empire space, President Santos offered a final observation. "Admiral, you came here to conquer what you saw as primitive animals. I hope you have learned that there is nothing more dangerous than an animal that refuses to accept its place in someone else's food chain." The Admiral's shuttle departed the Aurora carrying news that would shake the Empire to its foundations. The humans had not only avoided conquest, they had negotiated as equals and won recognition for their independence. More importantly, they had proven something that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. They had shown that no empire, no matter how powerful, could survive when its subjects stopped believing in its invincibility. As the human delegation returned to Earth, they carried with them the knowledge that they had changed the galaxy forever. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of universal resistance had begun. The Empire had learned fear, and that fear would spread faster than any weapon they possessed. 6 months after the Treaty of Seoul was signed, High Chancellor Vexel stood before the Empire Council in emergency session. The crystal chambers that had once echoed with confident declarations of conquest now buzzed with urgent debate as reports arrived every hour of new systems declaring independence. Ambassador Kriltak, whose warnings had been dismissed with such laughter, now presented the intelligence briefing that would change galactic politics forever. "Honored delegates, the human contamination has spread beyond our worst fears. 43 sectors have reported coordinated uprisings. More significantly, these rebellions are winning." The holographic display showed a map of Empire space painted with spreading patches of red. These were systems where local populations had successfully thrown off imperial control, using human-taught tactics and hybrid technologies that combined alien science with human creativity. General Zordon, the same lizard-like officer who had dismissed human capabilities months earlier, stood with visible agitation. "How is this possible? These are species we have controlled for centuries. They lack the technological capability to threaten our infrastructure." Dr. Patricia Morgans, BROADCAS Tignal, provided the answer. Her image appeared on screens throughout Empire space, transmitted from the liberated world of Kepler Prime. She spoke not just to human forces, but to any species willing to listen. "My name is Dr. Patricia Morgan, and I am broadcasting from the first world liberated by the Human Coalition Alliance. To any species currently under Empire control, understand this: you do not need superior technology to be free. You need superior determination and the willingness to work together." Her transmission included detailed instructions for disrupting Empire infrastructure, coordinating resistance movements, and creating communication networks that could avoid Imperial surveillance. More importantly, it included testimonies from dozens of species who had successfully reclaimed their independence. Captain Alex Thompson commanded the liberated fleet vessel, Freedom's Dawn. He had been leading joint operations throughout the Outer Rim territories with mixed species crews. His forces demonstrated something the Empire had never encountered: voluntary cooperation between different alien races united by shared principles rather than fear. "The thing about humans," explained Commander Velenash, the former Empire officer who now served as Thompson's tactical advisor, "is that they do not just fight for their own freedom. They fight for the idea that everyone deserves to be free. It is a concept so foreign to the Empire that they never developed ways to stop it." The crisis deepened when Admiral Paul Richards began broadcasting what humans called liberation protocols directly into Empire military channels. These were not just tactical manuals, but philosophical arguments that challenged the basic assumptions of imperial rule. To any Empire personnel receiving this transmission, Richard's calm voice reached across star systems. Ask yourself a simple question. When was the last time you chose your assignment rather than being ordered to it? When did you last speak freely without fear of punishment? Freedom is not just for humans, it is for anyone brave enough to claim it. The psychological warfare proved devastatingly effective. Empire military units began experiencing defections, mutinies, and what their commanders called reliability failures as individual soldiers began questioning orders that involved suppressing civilian populations. High Chancellor Vextel convened an emergency meeting with his senior advisors. Their skin patterns were dim with the equivalent of exhaustion and fear. "The humans have weaponized philosophy," reported Chief Analyst Morthick, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "They have convinced our subjects that resistance is not only possible but morally necessary. How do we fight an idea?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Rachel Green, the human officer who had been captured during the Battle of Seoul, had been held in an Empire prison facility for 8 months. Her escape, assisted by a coordinated uprising of prisoners from 17 different species, demonstrated the full extent of humanity's impact on galactic civilization. Her message, broadcast from the liberated prison world, reached the Empire Council directly. "Chancellor Vextel, you made one critical error in your assessment of humanity. You assumed that because we were technologically inferior, we were also intellectually and morally inferior. You never considered that our struggles have taught you something your easy conquests never could: how to turn disadvantage into strength." The final blow came when entire Empire fleets began surrendering to Liberation Coalition forces without firing a shot. The crews, composed of conquered species who had been pressed into Imperial service, chose freedom over their former masters. Within a year of first contact, the Galactic Empire had collapsed into a collection of independent systems, most allied with the Human Coalition Partnership. The former Imperial worlds found themselves dealing with a new galactic reality where cooperation, rather than conquest, determined political power. Ambassador Kriltek, now serving as the first Vorthek representative to the Coalition Assembly, delivered the final assessment to the remnants of the former Empire Council. "We were warned about humans, and we laughed because we measured them by their technology rather than their character. We learned too late that a species that has survived everything their violent world could throw at them, that has turned their capacity for warfare into a drive for justice, cannot be conquered. They can only be befriended or avoided." President Centus, addressing the First Galactic Liberation Council from the rebuilt chambers on Earth, offered the new alliance's founding principle: "We did not set out to destroy an empire. We simply refused to accept that any thinking being should live in chains. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is not a gun or a bomb. It is the simple refusal to surrender your dignity." The age of the Galactic Empire had ended, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history: a voluntary alliance of free species, guided by the radical human concept that freedom was not something to be granted by the powerful, but something inherent to all intelligent life. The humans had been warned about, mocked, and underestimated. In the end, they had done something far more devastating than conquering their enemies. They had made them irrelevant. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds where beings had lived in fear and servitude, children of dozens of species learned new words in their languages, words like freedom, dignity, and hope, words that humans had taught them meant more than any weapon or technology. The Empire was gone, but something better had taken its place: the knowledge that no one had to be a slave ever again.